You read a headline about record wealth and it lands the way luxury real estate listings do. Interesting, glossy, and clearly meant for somebody else. Because out there, apparently, America keeps minting millionaires. Meanwhile, in your actual life, the rent still bites, the card still needs clearing, and the amount left at the end of the month still has the emotional stability of a shopping cart with one broken wheel. So the question starts to creep in. Not, am I rich yet? Nothing that dramatic. Just, am I even on track? Because if the country keeps producing millionaires and your own account still feels like a slightly stressed group project, either you are doing something wrong or the scoreboard is lying to you. The uncomfortable answer is that it might be both. Meet three people. Rachel is 44, a hospital billing specialist making about $68,000 a year. She is organized, reliable, and permanently one unexpected expense away from having to reshuffle the entire month. She is not trying to become rich in the flashy sense. She just wants the option to stop feeling financially tense all the time before her 50s properly arrive. Tiana is 27, a physical therapist assistant making about $84,000. Retirement is not emotionally real to her yet because retirement still sounds like a word from somebody else's life. What feels real is the fact that earlier this year she skipped a friend's Nashville weekend because the flight and hotel would have cost around $500, and that month, $500 was not a detail. It was the entire argument. Derek is also 44. He works in pharmaceutical sales and earns about $148,000 a year. He has the biggest salary of the three by a long stretch. He also has the financed SUV, the upgraded house, the premium gym membership, the better weekends, and the deeply private frustration of getting raises he never seems to actually feel. One of these people is much closer to becoming a multimillionaire than the others. The order is going to irritate you, because it has much less to do with income than most people want to believe. Before that, there is a more important question. On track compared to what? Compared to headlines? Compared to your age? Compared to your salary? Compared to the version of you that thought making good money would make all of this feel easier? That is the first trap. Most people ask whether they are on track as if there is one clear race, one clear finish line, and one clear pace they are supposed to be keeping. There is not. There are two forces pulling on your future at the same time. The first is the one everybody talks about, your money trying to grow, investing, compounding, returns. The nice clean chart that starts small, gets boring for years, and then suddenly curves upward like money finally remembered what it was supposed to be doing. That force is real, but there is another one. And this is the one people feel every day without naming it. Your life keeps getting more expensive while you are busy trying to save for it. Housing moves, healthcare moves, childcare moves, insurance moves, college moves. The number you actually need if you ever want to stop working moves. So the real question is not just whether your money is growing. The real question is whether it is growing fast enough to catch a future that keeps quietly becoming more expensive. That is what on track actually means. And once you understand that, the whole millionaire conversation starts to look very different. Because a lot of people hear multimillionaire and imagine a lifestyle, a big kitchen, a dramatic staircase, a driveway with vehicles that seem to have been purchased primarily to reassure strangers. But that is not actually what most people are chasing. What they want is not the image. They want the outcome. They want money that does not vanish. Choices that do not depend entirely on payroll. The ability to stop panicking every time the economy sneezes. The option to say no. The option to breathe. That is what the number is supposed to buy, and that is why getting the track wrong is so expensive. Here is where the conversation usually goes off the rails. People hear broad wealth numbers and assume those numbers describe normal life. They do not. Averages are especially dangerous here. Average wealth sounds like a useful benchmark until you remember that a small number of very wealthy households can drag the entire number upward while ordinary people are still standing in line at Target trying to decide whether the bigger pack of paper towels is actually a financial decision now. What matters more is not the glamorous average, it is the middle. The ordinary person, the person in the actual room, the person who earns, spends, saves a bit, worries more than they admit, and suspects they should be further along by now. That person is much closer to your audience than the headlines are. Which brings us back to Rachel, Tiana, and Derek. Tiana starts first. At 27, she begins investing $650 a month into a broad market index fund. Nothing clever, nothing exotic, no TED Talk in human form telling her she has discovered a secret. Just a boring automatic transfer, month after month. That is it. And that is exactly why it works, because a lot of people want wealth building to feel dramatic enough to be meaningful. It usually is not. It is repetitive, quiet, almost offensively plain. That is one of the reasons so few people stick with it. It does not feel impressive early enough. Now look at Rachel. She starts later, much later. She does not have Tiana's runway, and she definitely does not have Derek's salary. But Rachel understands something Derek does not. The point of money is not to look like things are working. The point of money is to make life stop feeling like one long emergency. So Rachel builds around that, not with a magical amount, with a real one. An amount that leaves a mark on the month. An amount that hurts a little because by your 40s, if the amount does not hurt a little, it is usually not big enough to matter. Then there is Derek. This is the one a lot of people are going to feel, because Derek is not a villain. He is not a clown. He is not blowing money on nonsense in a way that makes for easy moral lessons. He is doing what millions of decent, responsible adults do. He is spending like a person whose income should be enough. That is the problem. The larger mortgage made sense. The SUV made sense. The upgraded vacations made sense. The club sports made sense. The meal delivery made sense. The better neighborhood made sense. Every one of those choices was defensible. That is why lifestyle creep is so destructive. It does not announce itself as self-sabotage. It shows up dressed as common sense. And it turns high income into a beautifully packaged version of being stuck. That is what your audience lives, not cartoonish recklessness. Respectable leakage. The salary rises, the life expands. The wealth does not. So now let us get more specific. Can a normal American with a decent job become a multimillionaire? Yes, absolutely, but not in the way most people imagine. Not because they manifested abundance. Not because they found one weird stock the banks don't want you to know about. Not because they bought a course with a Lamborghini on the landing page. They do it because a few very unsexy things become true for a very long time. They start soon enough. Or if they start late, they save hard enough to compensate. They keep a meaningful gap between what they earn and what they spend. They invest that gap consistently. They do not interrupt the process every time life gets emotionally noisy. And they do not let every raise become a permanent new cost of being them. That last one matters more than most people realize. Because people think wealth is built from big decisions. It often is not. It is built from what happens to the raises. A raise is a test disguised as relief. That is why Derek is struggling. The raises came. They just got claimed immediately. A better house, a better car, better weekends, more expensive defaults. The raise did happen. He just never got to keep meeting it. That is the difference between looking successful and becoming wealthy. One is visible, one is structural. And most people spend half their lives funding the first one while wondering why the second one never arrives. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable in a useful way. A person earning $84,000 and investing consistently from 27 can be on a better long-term path than a person earning $148,000 who saves erratically and lets spending expand with every increase. That sounds unfair. It is also just arithmetic. Income matters. Of course it matters. But income only becomes wealth when it survives contact with your life. And a shocking amount of income never survives that contact. So what does on track actually look like? It does not have to mean perfection. It does not even have to mean you are exactly where some benchmark table says you should be. Those benchmark tables can be useful, but a lot of people use them the way people use body mass indexes, as if one broad number can explain the entire shape of a human life. It cannot. A more useful version of on track looks like this. 1. Your investing is real, not theoretical. Not, I mean to invest. Not, I move money around when I have a good month. Not, I save whatever is left. Actual money leaving your account and staying gone into investments every month. That is the first filter. The size matters, yes, but reality matters more. A smaller amount that actually happens beats a bigger amount that exists only in conversations with yourself. 2. Your lifestyle is not consuming every improvement. This is the painful one. If your income keeps rising and your net worth does not, the issue is not a lack of earning power. It is that your life is absorbing every improvement before it can become an asset. That does not make you irresponsible. It makes you normal, but normal is very expensive. 3. Your money has enough time to matter. This is why early starters look like magicians later. They are not smarter. They just gave the machine more years to work. A person who starts at 27 with a decent rate has a radically different burden from someone who starts at 44. That does not mean late starters are doomed. It means they need urgency instead of runway, and a lot of people do not accept that quickly enough. 4. Your setup is boring enough to survive your feelings. This one is underrated. The best portfolio is not the one that sounds smartest. It is the one you can feed for 20 years without turning into a part-time conspiracy theorist every time the market gets weird. Low fees, broad exposure, automatic transfers, minimal drama. People love optimization because it feels intelligent, but the people who actually build wealth usually choose simplicity because simplicity is harder to interrupt. 5. You know what the number is actually for. This is the deepest piece, because if multi-millionaire is just a shiny word in your head, you will chase the image instead of the function. The function is what matters. A multi-million-dollar portfolio for most normal people is not ridiculous luxury money. It is often just the amount needed to produce a durable, work-optional life later on. That sentence is less glamorous. It is also much more useful. Because the real goal is not the title, the real goal is the freedom. And if you mix those two things up, you spend very differently. That is the moment Rachel, Tiana, and Derek stop being 3 people in a video and start becoming 3 versions of the same question. Tiana shows what time can do. Rachel shows what urgency can still do. Derek shows what income cannot do by itself. And that is the answer. The person most likely to become a multimillionaire is not the one who looks richest in the present. It is the one whose system keeps the most money alive for the longest time. That is it. Not charisma, not aesthetics, not salary envy, not motivational quotes against a sunset. A system. That is why some people quietly become very wealthy while other people who appear far more successful stay financially fragile for decades. They are being scored by different things. One is being scored by appearance, the other by retained capital, and retained capital always wins eventually. If this lands a little too close to home, that is probably because of the gap between I earn good money and I am actually building wealth is much more common than people admit. A useful next step is brutally simple. Work out what is actually being invested every month, what your raises have actually done to your lifestyle, whether your money is growing faster than the life you are trying to afford. That is the real scoreboard. And if you want more videos that treat money like the life story it actually is rather than a collection of slogans taped to a chart, subscribe.